Welcome to the Tea Time Podcast, where it's all about taking a few healthy minutes each day just for you, with your host, Sharissa Bradley.
Hello and welcome back. I'm so happy to have you guys. Today I wanted to talk about, drumroll please, alcohol. I had this idea because of a friend of mine came over the other day and we were talking about how to eat clean and how to kind of live a normal life and still socialize. And if I do these things, if I do these diets, if I change my diet, am I going to have to give up my alcohol? So there are these questions, and this is what the discussion was about. And I thought, this isn't really something I ever really thought about talking about. I didn't really think that people had this issue or didn't know these things because it wasn't really on my radar. So I'm really grateful. Thank you so much for the idea. And I'm excited to get to talk about it with you guys today. I want to give you a little bit of my backstory. I was raised in a home where alcohol made a less than ideal situation, even more less than ideal, to put it frankly. And I was never really drawn to alcohol myself. I saw it change and destroy lives, and it made me feel like I wouldn't be able to withstand that pressure, and that it was going to be something that was going to try to take over my life, like it was some kind of demon or something. So I wasn't really ever drawn to it. And I didn't actually have my first drink until I was 20 years old. Again, because I really never cared about it or thought about alcohol. And I just came to a point in my life where I thought, like, okay, this is something that seems almost like a rite of passage, I guess, here in the United States, that we hit a certain age and we feel like we have to live these, party years or whatever it is. And so I fell right into that right around my early 20s. And I started experimenting with drinking different types of alcohol. And I was, I enjoyed it. And I loved learning about the different types of alcohols and the different drinks that you could make, and I got really excited about it, and I'd make my own things, and then I ended up settling with just wine. I really enjoyed having a glass of wine, and I actually got kind of snobby about wine later on in my life and became like a wine club member, and I had a very specific preference for very dry, dark, thick red wines. And I loved a dark black coffee in the morning and a dark Malbec at night. And every day that became the pattern for me. And I really enjoyed this, now what became a ritual for me. And again, I really never thought about alcohol as having any kind of an effect on my life. I just thought of it more psychological, that I had seen alcohol take people's lives from them, but I didn't really see it as any actual effect when I was drinking the wine. And then when I got diagnosed with autoimmune disease about 3 years ago, I had to really look at everything that I was doing, everything I was eating, everything I was drinking, everything I was putting on my body or in my body, supplements, everything that I was doing. And that included that nightly glass of wine. And trust me, I held on to it as long as I possibly could. But when I did the autoimmune protocol to try to reverse the autoimmune diseases, I really needed to be super serious about it. So one of their rules was to cut out alcohol. And I did that. And I did not drink for about 2 years because I was really trying to heal, and it was worth it to me to not do anything. And again, it really wasn't ever my passion to drink anyways, just kind of this habit that I had created. And so with time, I created a new nightly habit, drinking a glass of tea. In fact, that became my new thing, and look at where that got me. So I wanted to understand kind of what it was that was affecting me with alcohol, because there is still a time and a place. And now when I'm out with my friends, or I'm out in a social situation, or we're having guests at our house, I do like to enjoy a glass of wine, or a mixed drink, something like that. But I still don't want anything to jeopardize my health. So I take a lot of precautions when it comes to the kind of alcohol that I put in my body, even if it is, small amounts. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about what alcohol does to the body in the first place, because it's piqued my curiosity when I was getting healthier and I wasn't drinking the alcohol. And even when I would try to, every now and then I would try to have a glass of red wine, I instantly would get a migraine. And funnily enough, that's the one alcohol I really can't drink anymore without really paying for it within just a few minutes. It doesn't even take long. It's like I go from sober to instant hangover, which is interesting. I never would have known that had I not cut it out for those 2 years. So as hard as that was, it was worth learning those lessons. So alcohol is a depressant. So what that means is when we drink alcohol, there's two types of, well, there's lots of things, but there's two types of categories for these things. Like if you're taking a drug, it can either be a stimulant, which makes you like more hyperactive. It makes your cells more aware. Your body can do things a little bit faster. Like caffeine, for instance, makes us hyped up. That's that stimulant side of it. Alcohol is also a drug, and it is depressant. So what that means is not like depressant as in it's going to make you depressed, but depressant meaning that it slows down the processes in the body. So this is why it's such a big deal to not drink and drive, because your body has a speed that it can operate at currently. So if you were to This is actually something really simple that you can do. You can take a ruler and hold it about 4 inches above your hand, and then drop the ruler and try to catch it and with the other hand. And if you can catch the ruler, then you probably still have pretty good reaction time. But most likely what happens for most of us, I don't know what ages you all are, but at 24 years old, your reaction time is the most that it's ever going to be in your lifetime. And from then on, it starts to decline. That's kind of one of those things we can keep it, but we do still tend to lose some of it as we get older. So our reaction time, that will determine how quickly we can react to a car swerving in front of us, or somebody walking in front of us, or something fallen in the road. So anytime we pay attention and we see some event happen, that reaction time is how long it takes you to then change your behavior or make adjustments in what you are going to do to make sure you don't get into any kind of an accident. So that's our reaction time. Those kinds of things can be sped up or slowed down depending on the type of drug that you're using, whether it's a stimulant or a depressant. Alcohol happens to slow down those processes even more. So if you have pretty good reaction time normally and you drink alcohol and then you get in the car, your reactions are going to be much slower. And that's what causes those accidents. It's not that people aren't seeing that cars are coming, it's that their processing isn't happening fast enough for the brain to understand that it needs to move the body. So we take in that sensory information of seeing the vehicle, and maybe even your brain says like, oh, I see that thing, and we need to move out of the way. But it's really slow to send the signal from your brain back to your hands or your foot to push on the brake or to turn the steering wheel. And that's what makes it so dangerous when we're drinking and driving, because it's slowing all of that down. And we don't really have any control over that. Once it's in your body, it has to run its course, and it will eventually come out of the body, and the body will regulate its ability to process things. So that is what alcohol kind of does on a neurological level, or to your brain. It just kind of slows things down. That's why people who you can kind of go both ways. Some people get really calm when they drink, and some people get really active. That doesn't actually have to do with what is happening in their brain as far as their nervous system goes, but it can explain kind of what's been going on in their body or their brain for the previous week, things like that. It can really calm you down, or it can hype you up if you're not paying attention to those kind of nuanced things that are nagging on you. Okay, so alcohol can have this great effect on all of us to kind of loosen up, slow down, calm down, and relax and enjoy the rest of the evening, especially if you have a hard time winding down. It's not a bad thing, but there's good ways and bad ways to take care of yourself. So that's how alcohol affects you on a neurological level, but it also affects your digestive system. Not necessarily bad, but it's something that it's important to understand so that you can figure out how to drink appropriately for yourself. So alcohol happens to break down in the body exactly the same way that white cane sugar does. So it translates in your body really quickly from alcohol. It turns right into sugar. And unfortunately, it's a really simple sugar, and simple meaning that it's really easy for the body to break it down. So when you drink a glass of any kind of alcohol, beer included, you're going to get a spike in your blood sugar levels because your body is going to convert the alcohol really quickly into sugar. And instead of having kind of like a longer drawn out release of that sugar, it's going to get right into the bloodstream really quickly, and you're going to get like a high blood sugar type reaction. So that's where you get that hyperactivity from drinking alcohol. You're actually getting like a ton of sugar in the brain. So you're getting this kind of slow down effect from the alcohol in the cells on the neurological level, but you're also getting in your body a ton of sugar that it's going to have to work itself off. So what happens then is the pancreas produces insulin, and that insulin goes and binds to the sugar, and that little pair, that insulin and sugar molecule, then go looking for cells and tissues that need to be using that energy. So if you're running around, or you're chasing your kids, or you're doing some type of crazy activities and you're burning a lot of energy, that's great, because the alcohol, that sugar that it became, is going to start to burn off. But if you're not doing anything, if you're just kind of like hanging out, watching a movie, relaxing, that sugar doesn't have anywhere to go. So because of that insulin bound with the sugar, it has to do that, otherwise they become toxic. That insulin sugar molecule combined, actually, if it doesn't get used, can be stored in your fat cells. The body stores things in the fat cells that it's trying to protect itself from. So if there's some kind of thing that it's trying to get rid of, and it sees like this is a toxic substance and we need to get it out of the body, but it can't burn out fast enough, it actually gets stored in the fat cells to protect itself. This is a really great thing, but it can create unwanted fat gain. So if we're not burning that sugar, we're storing it somewhere. And sometimes that creates an unsightly, if we're caring about what we're looking like, or if maybe we're having a struggle with how much weight we're gaining, or we can't lose the weight, that's actually something to look at. Because if you're getting a lot of sugar intake, but you're not getting rid of any of that sugar, then that's going to create that problem for you. And I think it's more common for most people to think of sugary substances as the things that more clearly look like sugar, like a piece of cake or a cupcake, things like that. But actually, a glass of wine, a cup or a tequila, a beer, all of these things, they actually are the same thing in the body around the same amount of time as eating those kinds of things. So if you prefer to eat your sugar or drink your sugar, they're both going to end up being the exact same reaction in the body. And then one other thing about alcohol is that when we drink it at night, we have all that sugar going in our body. And what happens is your body is trying to burn that sugar while you sleep, which is, again, amazing. And we're processing a lot of information when we sleep, so we need calories. That's not a problem. The problem is when you're burning sugars as calories in the night, we tend to wake up when the sugar wears off. So if you go to sleep really easily because you had a glass of wine, but around 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, you wake up randomly for no reason at all, you just kind of seem to wake up, it's actually because the sugar at that moment just finished burning and it's done. Like it's all stored in your fat cells, or it's stored in the digestive system, or it's out of the body or burned through the cells. So it's gone. There's nothing left for the body to use. And when that happens, it triggers a response in your adrenal glands that say, hey, we don't have any sugar and we still have a need for energy in the body because we're still working here. And so it wakes you up because it gives you a little bit of a shot of adrenaline. And it comes out of nowhere, and it can be any time depending on what time the sugar in your body wears off. So that's kind of an interesting thing that happens when we're drinking at night. And there's a really good way to combat this. And I know I've been saying some kind of negative things about alcohol, but now I'm going to tell you how to do it kind of the way I do it so that I don't have any of those nasty side effects. So first of all, when I have any kind of a drink, for me, it's either white wine or clear tequila. So the silver tequilas, any of those. Anytime you see a brown colored tequila, it's got some type of an additive in it to make it brown, usually. I have been wrong in the past, but typically it's very safe to get a clear tequila because you know that nothing's going to be in it. Tequila naturally is clear. It's made out of agave. It's one of the only alcohols that's made from a plant, like a green plant that grows rather than a grain. Which is kind of interesting. It digests a little bit differently in the body too, and kind of can act as a probiotic because it can move through into the small intestine, which not many alcohols can get that far because, again, they're getting burned off through the sugars. Because this is a little bit of a different process, the body sees it a little bit differently too. So it has a little bit of not as bad of side effects, and it can have actually a positive effect as well. So my preference, if I'm going to have a mixed drink, is tequila. And I do make a lot of margaritas at home. We use like frozen fruit. I love to do a bag of frozen mango, a couple of cans of coconut water, and then ice and tequila, and blend that all up with a little bit of lime juice. And you got these like delicious mango frozen margaritas, and you know exactly what's in it. And it's totally clean and delicious. I like to serve that when I have guests because then it kind of looks like, oh, look at me, I'm so fancy, and I can have these like fancy blended drinks and be totally clean. Also, I'll do like some sparkling water with tequila and a little bit of lime as just kind of like a regular everyday kind of a cocktail. Like nothing fancy, but it still gets the job done. And otherwise, I like to drink white wine, but you have to be really careful with wine these days, and a lot of beers actually, and wines and liquors, because a lot of the grains that are being used now are being sprayed by a lot of chemicals. And I'm sure you've seen things like Roundup and pesticides, herbicides, things that are not really good for our body. All of that stuff that's in those grapes, or that are getting sprayed on those grapes, is going into the wine. So you want to make sure that the wine that you're buying does have good practices. Their grapes are good quality grapes. They're not highly sprayed with a bunch of chemicals. That's going to give you like headaches, migraines. It's probably going to make it so it's not as easy on your body because you're going to be drinking those chemicals in, and that's kind of a hard hit to the body. So if we can make sure they're a little bit cleaner, there's actually a company now called Paleo Wines, and it's paleo endorsed wine companies. So that means that they're going to have really high quality practices. The paleo stamp of approval has to go through quite a bit of research, and they have to meet a lot of qualifications. They can't just say, oh, we don't spray our grapes, which is how you get the organic label. They actually have to go through testing, and they show that there's fewer sulfites, the grapes are organic, they were never sprayed, the way that they actually make the wine is cleaner. Everything that they do is a little bit better for you. So if you can get a really good quality wine, and these aren't expensive, they're like really, really reasonably priced, from all the way down to like $10 a bottle. And they have every kind of wine you could want. So if you can get a really good quality wine and not have to worry about having any of the negative effects, like the headaches and things like that the next day, that would be a really good thing to have, I would think. So yes, wine, tequila. Those are my two go-tos, mostly because I don't eat any grains. My diet is a grain-free diet. I don't eat rice. Or very rarely do I eat rice. And I don't eat any wheat or barley, any of those types of things. So for me, I can't do, or not can't, but I choose not to do any of the beers or the grain-based liquors because those things don't suit me in my body and they don't feel good to me. So I'm not going to be able to drink those alcohols without having the same types of negative effects. And that's something to really pay attention to. We often want to think that if we're avoiding gluten, or we're avoiding soy, or we're avoiding these things, that we're not getting those in the drinks that we're having. So really check the ingredients, really check to see what is it in there that makes Fireball whiskey super cinnamony? Like, what are the types of things that are making these alcohols what they are and the flavors that they are? And it would be important for you to know if they're sprayed, do they have pesticides, do they have herbicides, things like that. And I recommend looking around and having some fun with this, because you can really make it a game. Like, order all kinds of different alcohols, things like that, and try out some new paleo type alcohol recipes. Lots of fresh fruit, lots of sparkling water, fresh lime, really good, really wholesome flavors that you don't feel like you're missing out on anything, but you're not going to have as many negative side effects. And then when we eat or when we drink, it's good if we eat a meal with it. If we're eating a meal that has something like really good high quality fats, really good high quality protein, that alcohol isn't going to hit us as hard when we're waking up in the middle of the night. So what that means is if you're eating a really good meal, you might have enough calories and enough energy to sustain you through the whole night, rather than waking up when that sugar burns off from the alcohol. So if you're having a problem with that, if you're waking up in the middle of the night and you're not figuring out like, why am I waking up? But you have a regular nightly glass of something, try adding a little bit of fat or protein to your diet before you go to bed and see if that helps. Because often when we pair those things, the sugar, the fat, and the protein together, we get a much more sustainable evening where we can burn calories successfully throughout the whole night, rather than being woken up at some point when the adrenal glands kick on. So it's worth a shot if you are interested in sleeping through the night, if this is your problem. I also wanted to talk about how to order a drink when you go out. So if you're going out and you want to, stay on this like clean path or clean journey, and you're really trying to figure out what it is that's bothering you in your life, I would recommend sticking with things like the clear tequilas or the white wine or even the red wine. Just find the best quality they have on the menu. And then adding things like natural ingredients. So you could do a little bit of sparkling or mineral water. You can add orange juice and have like a tequila sunrise, or cranberry juice, things like that. So not such sugary drinks where they're adding a lot of things that you don't really know, especially if it's a pre-mixed type drink. Then there's often going to be additives, colors added to make sure it looks a certain way. Often I've found that there's like yellow dye and red dye in some of the pre-mixed drinks because they want you to look and think that it's a prettier drink. So that makes perfect sense. It's not like they're trying to, I don't think they realize that it's harmful. But this way you can make sure that you are getting the most incredible ingredients, you're not getting those headaches, you're not feeling like crap the next day, and you can very, very easily still be like on a clean journey, figuring out your health, fixing your health, even reversing autoimmune disease, and still enjoy yourself every now and then, or even on a regular basis with just the highest quality ingredients that you can get, and not feel like you have to be deprived or be that one person who has to say like, oh, I can't do that right now because of X, Y, and Z. Like, live your life and be excited. Yay! You can drink again, Sharissa says. So tequila, wine. If you're doing beer, look for organic if you can. If you're doing ciders, totally recommend organic because apples are one of the highest chemical sprayed fruits you can get. And if you're just doing juiced apples that are covered in pesticides, then most likely you're getting some of that in your system as well. So better to look for things like organic and never sprayed, things like that. And if you're doing things at home, I recommend looking up fun recipes like paleo mixed drinks or different paleo wines, and start having some fun, experiment with it, and make it something that's exciting that you can really be happy for. All right, well, that's what I wanted to tell you guys about alcohol. I hope you learned something, and I definitely do not have negative feelings about alcohol. I just don't do it that much because it's not my personal favorite. But I do have answers if you have questions. So please send me any of your questions, and I would be so excited to have an answer for you here on the show. I hope you guys have a really great week, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for spending your tea time with us. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Living well and shining on what you're about. Eating well is loving from the inside out. So take the time and love yourself. Take your plans off of the shelf. It's for all you love, with all that you do. Don't forget to love you too.